Hello, I'm Henry Keane and UATV English is on the line to give you the Ukrainian perspective, and this is the reality of war. Watching the episode, Mark Rutte warns of Chinese threats. Russians try to rebuild their bombers fleet. Ukraine will not agree to limits on its defense capabilities. Please don't be shy, comment and subscribe to our channel while watching it. By doing so, you help us to fight off criminal Russian aggression, and welcome to the news floors. China could use Russia as a proxy and encourage it to launch an attack on Atlantic Alliance countries in order to distract the United States from the Indo-Pacific region and facilitate a simultaneous offensive against Taiwan. In an interview with New York Times, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said,
There's a second reason that has to do with the Indo-Pacific. There's an increasing realization, and let's not be naive about this. If Xi Jinping would attack Taiwan, he would first make sure that he makes a call to his very junior partner in all of this, Vladimir Putin, residing in Moscow, and telling him, hey, I'm going to do this, and I need you to keep them busy in Europe by attacking NATO territory. That is most likely the way this will progress. Mark Rutte, NATO Secretary General in the New York Times.
According to Rutte, this scenario could become real in the next 5 to 7 years if military deterrence is not strengthened right now. In this context, the NATO leader urged member states to raise their defense spending to 5% of GDP immediately, as discussed at the June summit. In addition, he pointed out that the allied arms industry must urgently transform itself to be in a position to face simultaneously threats not only from Russia but also from North Korea or Iran. Rutte noted that Moscow already produces 3 times as much ammunition in 3 months as NATO produced it in a year, and warned of Russia's military ties with China, Iran and North Korea, the Indo-Pacific and the Atlantic becoming increasingly connected, he concludes. Organizing national referendums to mobilize the constituency ahead of parliamentary elections is the favorite tactics of the populists. And that's right, Viktor Orban, of course. In 2016, he already held a Ask a Passerby process in regards of EU migration policy. These tactics might look legit and democratic even, like what could be more democratic than asking everyone what they think about this democracy or that issue, right? Everyone has an opinion, and the biggest lies populists enforce is that this opinion needs to be not only heard but also taken into the account. But no, it does not work like that. Patriotism is not a proficiency. Expertise is. And according to experts, the recent Orban's poll is directly linked to the fast-growing support for his main rival, Peter Magyar, whose activity, according to the Viktor Orban, of course, is funded directly from Washington? No, sorry, Berlin, maybe. No, sorry for that again. Right, Brussels.
Despite the propaganda lie, the maximum number of all voters is around 600,000 people, and this is the lowest number in the whole history of the national consultations. It is curious that the propaganda tries to make us believe in the false figure of 2 million that they themselves announced, saying that a notary will certify the result. Certify what exactly? Anonymous ballots that can be filled in by anyone, or online votes that can be cast by anyone and in any number? Peter Magyar, leader of the TISA party on Facebook.
Around 60% of the citizens of EU member states support the Kyiv's European aspirations. This is clearly shown by data from social survey conducted by the European Union in May 2025. However, why I'm not surprised, in June, the Hungarian authorities conducted their own referendum on the topic. According to the results of such referendum, announced 95% of Hungarians reportedly voted against Ukraine's EU membership. Still, even domestically, the results of this vote are disputed. Here we go again. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban continues the targeted anti-Ukrainian campaign. This time he states that if a referendum was held in every EU state, the majority of people would allegedly oppose Ukraine's European aspirations and integration. It is nothing new. Orban repeats his good old propaganda slogan that it is favorable for officials in Brussels to hide the real mood of people in order to get Kyiv into EU faster. He cited 2 reasons reasons why Europeans should be wary of Ukraine's membership in the EU alleged involvement in war, and the economy's decline.
The European Commission is on the wrong track. They think that without people, it is possible to take an important decision that will determine the fate of the whole of Europe. They are mistaken. Ukraine's membership will not happen. We are on it. Although they say they do not pay attention to us, they are forced to do it. They cannot go through us.
Right. Countries that support the so-called anti-American policy of BRICS will be imposed additional duties of 10%. This was announced by US President Donald Trump on his Truth Social network. His command came after members of the group criticized his tariff policies as well as proposed reforms to the International Monetary Fund. BRICS brought together the leaders of Brazil, Russia, India and China at its first summit in 2009. South Africa later joined the bloc, and last year Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iran, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates also joined it. Pope Leo XIV has addressed pilgrims from Ukraine. During Sunday prayers at the Vatican, he called for dialogue to end the war. His words were another sign of support, of course, for Ukrainians, and appeal to the international community not to forget about the war that continues and claims human lives every single day. We all sincerely wish that prayers and other words would help a war to stop, but we all same sincerely know that's not going to happen. Russia is trying to replace its aircraft lost during the Ukrainian Operation Spiderweb. Several new hangars for new bomber production are being built at the Kazan aviation plant. However, according to current time publication, sanctions and shortage of high-level specialists is a serious issue on the way. In particular, the Russians are finding it difficult to procure parts, even although the media previously revealed that by circumventing the sanctions, they managed to obtain Western aircraft components worth at least €1 billion. The Shahed assault drones, with which Russia is attacking Ukraine every day for 3.5 years by now, are assembled using Chinese components. Russian companies buy these components directly from large, prominent, well-known Chinese companies. This is reported by The Insider. According to the media, the Chinese supply covers significant parts of the components essential for the kamikaze drones production. These include engines, pistons, satellite dishes, and carbon fiber fabric that is used to make the wings of the UAVs. Some of these components are camouflaged in the documents as a spare parts for snowmobiles. Agents of the ATESH guerrilla movement carried out a new act of sabotage and destroyed a relay cabinet near Debaltsevo, Donetsk Oblast. As a result, railroad logistics there were disrupted and supplies to the occupying army of Russia on the Donetsk front were delayed. According to the ATESH fighters themselves, trains delivering fuel, ammunition and military equipment regularly run on that stretch. Delays in supply will directly and negatively affect the combat capabilities of the occupying army, and thank you for that, ATESH. Now to the frontline updates. In the last 24 hours, the General Staff recorded 149 combat clashes. The most active axis is Pokrovsk, where the occupying forces attacked the positions of the defense forces of Ukraine as many as 40 times. In the Liman sector, 24 combat occurred clashes, with 20 more in a neighboring region to the south. In the Novopavlivka sector, 15 clashes observed. In the North Slobozhansk and Kursk sectors, 7. In the Kupiansk and Toretsk, 6 each. In the Seversk direction, 5. In the Kramatorsk direction, the Russian army did not carry no offensive as of today. Continuing the topic of losses of the Russian army in Ukraine, the Ukrainian Defense Forces eliminated 1,100 Russian servicemen over the past day alone, reports the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Also, the Ukrainian defenses destroyed 3 Russian tanks, 7 armored fighting vehicles, 2 multiple rocket launcher systems, and 33 units of artillery. Also, 233 tactical level UAVs and more than 100 units of automotive equipment were successfully eliminated. In the Donetsk direction, the frequency of fighting has decreased because Russians obviously redirected their forces towards Pokrovsk. This was stated by the spokesman of the Strategic Operational Group of Troops Khortytsa, Viktor Tregubov, on the air of the Ukrainian teleton. According to him, the fighting now is taking place in Donetsk Oblast, very close to the city of Dnipro. The Russian army is pressing towards the western border of the city.
Russian forces have long aimed to reach Kostiantynivka. They tried to achieve this through the Kramatorsk direction, the city of Chasiv Yar and surrounding settlements, or through Toretsk. In both cases, Russian troops got stuck. They didn't capture Toretsk and were unable to advance there. Therefore, they shifted their attack focus and are now attacking from the other side via the Pokrovsk-Kostiantynivka highway on the Pokrovsk front. That's why the number of clashes on the nearby Toretsk front has decreased. Viktor Tregubov, spokesman of the Strategic Operational Group of Troops, Khortytsia, on the air of Ukrainian National Telethon.
In the coming month, the Russian occupiers are likely to try to pocket the city of Pokrovsk in the Donetsk region. This is reported by the Institute for the Study of War. The Russian army recently advanced northeast of Pokrovsk and may try to move further into Dobropilya. Institute's analysts noted that for a further offensive, Russian troops would have to cross the Kazyany Torets river to advance west of Razinoye. This will be a substantial and additional obstacle since the advance will depend on the water level in the river. In addition, analysts note that the occupying army has likely reached a critical point of fatigue after more than a year of constant offensives. One person died as a result of Russian strike on Odessa overnight. An administrative building and private property damaged, cars, trucks and a bus were destroyed. Fires broke out, later extinguished by firefighters and rescuers. Kyiv was also under the attack of UAVs this night. Air defense was working heavily, we all heard that. Falling debris seen in two districts of the city, said the head of the Kyiv City Military Administration, Timur Tkachenko. As of now, there was no fires or casualties. According to President Zelensky, more than 40% of the weapons used at the front lines are currently produced domestically in Ukraine. The country is also increasing production volumes of artillery systems, armored vehicles, mines and ammunition. How Ukraine continues to develop the military-industrial complex, watch in our report for you.
Attracting investment into Ukraine's defense industry is a top priority for the country in all negotiations. That is why Ukraine will not agree to any restrictions on its defense capabilities, stated Foreign Ministry spokesperson Georgy Tykhy. Earlier, President Volodymyr Zelensky announced Ukraine's intention to boost joint arms production with foreign partners. These efforts are aimed at strengthening Ukraine's defense capacity and reinforcing its position in the security domain.
We've reached an agreement with the American side on significantly expanding joint efforts. This week, an agreement was signed between our Ministry of Defense of Ukraine and one of the leading American companies. It will provide Ukraine with hundreds of thousands of drones this year under special terms, and even more next year. In particular, interceptor drones, that clearly our priority.
According to Volodymyr Zelensky, more than 40% of the weapons used at the front are currently produced in Ukraine. The country is also increasing production volumes of artillery systems, armored vehicles, mines, and ammunition. Ukraine is focused on two key areas: expanding long-range weapons production and manufacturing interceptor drones. According to the president, incorporating advanced technologies in weapons manufacturing will help deter Russian aggression and more effectively protect civilians from attacks. Putin, in turn, seeks to prevent Ukraine from strengthening its defenses. That's why one of the Kremlin's conditions during the Istanbul negotiations was a significant reduction in Ukraine's troop numbers and weapons, a proposal rejected by both Ukraine and its European partners.
By the end of the year, we will supply Ukraine with 2 million shells. We've also invested over €2 billion into strengthening Ukraine's defense. We're doing this using proceeds from frozen Russian assets, so it's Russia that is paying for the weapons.
Danish Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen called for increased investment in Ukraine's defense sector in response to the latest massive Russian missile strike on Kyiv and other Ukrainian cities. It's worth noting that as of July 1st, Denmark has assumed the presidency of the Council of the European Union for the next 6 months.
The most obvious starting point is to invest more in Ukraine. They could probably double their production of military equipment if they had the funding. That money can come from frozen Russian funds. And this is exactly what Denmark is now actively exploring. Lars Løkke Rasmussen, Foreign Minister of Denmark in comments to Denmark's radio.
Ukraine's defense industry has the capacity to produce up to 10 million drones per year, said Defense Minister Rustem Umerov during a meeting with representatives of the German defense industry. According to him, the scale of Russian aggression continues to grow. Therefore, Ukraine and its allies are constantly looking for new and effective ways to boost defense capabilities.
With adequate funding, we can produce even more advanced strike systems. Our goal is to establish effective cooperation. The state is ready to assist companies in finding partners in Ukraine and to directly participate in joint projects, particularly through co-investment and the creation of joint ventures. Rustem Umerov, Minister of Defense of Ukraine via Telegram.
Ukraine plans to develop joint weapons production with Germany based on domestic defense technologies. This partnership aims to strengthen the defense capabilities of both countries. It involves manufacturing in Ukraine as well as joint production in Germany.
Germany is ready to provide funding, co-finance long-range fire systems produced in Ukraine, and the first systems should become available within the coming months. In addition, we will allocate funds to enable the Ukrainian government and armed forces to procure equipment from Ukrainian defense manufacturers.
Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, Ukraine has significantly increased its arms production. Today, it possesses more domestically produced weapons than ever before, reports the Wall Street Journal. The development of Ukraine's defense industry is becoming a decisive factor in the country's ability to reject Russian terms. Reported by Natalia Husak, Volodymyr Shtenilov, UATV News.
Well, that was it for today. My name is Ernie Keane and we are News Pulse at, that's right, UATV English. We thank you so very much for your time and attention. We appreciate that a lot as you help us to make Ukrainian voice to be heard worldwide. Please join the fight for freedom and sovereignty by subscribing to our channel. Hope to see you with us very soon. Stay tuned and goodbye.